house in downtown Milwaukee, Riverwest neighborhood. And right here in view of the camera is Kathleen Vinehout. She's here this evening doing a meet and greet at our local bar. And so we're going to be starting the program shortly, and I'll give you a little walk around before the program begins. And over here, you can see that we've got some food laid out. And I'll be over there snacking as the program progresses, and if I can find someone else to hold the camera. But this is a public house. It is one of only a couple of co-op-owned taverns in Wisconsin. And so this is quite an event for us here in Riverwest. I'm a Riverwest resident myself, and it's kind of exciting. Let me go and see if I can get a couple of people to talk about what they expect to learn today. Hi, I'm Dan Folkman.
Yeah.
And I'm live streaming right now on YouTube.
Okay.
And why don't you say a few words as to what you hope to learn today, and say this to our audience.
Well, I'm here with my friend Grace, who's over here, and we're just still undecided as to who we support in the Democratic field. It's such a large field, and so we thought this was a really good opportunity for pretty much a one-on-one with one of the candidates, and to learn a little bit more about her. Kathleen Vinehout is one of the candidates I'm very interested in, but I thought this would be a great opportunity.
What's your hope about the prospects for the November election?
I want to support somebody who can win. It's not good enough to just do well or have a good showing or come close. We have to win. We have to win, and so I want to know what they're going to do to win.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Want to give us your name and where are you from?
My name is Sue Anderson. I'm very active in Citizen Action, and I live in downtown Milwaukee.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
And how about you?
She just spoke for me. Yeah, I'm really good with that because I'm starving, and so
okay.
I'm gonna eat.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, let me go over here. And here's some more people. I'm live streaming here on YouTube. And say a few words, who you are, and what do you hope to learn tonight?
My name is Vic Baldaus. One of the reasons I came here tonight, I wanted to know Kathleen's position on marijuana. And she is basically for growing marijuana in Wisconsin and for selling and using it in Wisconsin. So, and there's a lot of other things, maybe more important topics, but those are all explained on her webpage. So if you want to learn more about Kathleen, check out her webpage. Yeah, so.
Very good. Sir, why don't you give us your name?
I'd rather keep a low profile.
Okay, very good. Hello, sir.
Take a pass.
You're going to take a pass. All right. Here's a young man over here. Hi, I'm Dan Folkman. With Community Rising.
Vote here, so I don't have the right to vote here, so does that matter?
It doesn't matter. Give us your name and make that statement, but then tell us a little bit about your perception of what's going on in terms of the election, and where are you from?
Okay, but it's a little bit weird because, okay, I'm from Taiwan and I don't have the right to vote here, but I do want to know what's going on with her policy about education in Wisconsin, especially in Milwaukee. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's very good. Are you here going to school, or are you working?
Yeah, I work at UWM actually.
Oh, very good. What do you do at UWM?
I am kind of like program associate, serving international students there, and providing them some programs and events. And that's much about me. Yep.
One more question. You said you're from Taiwan, correct?
Yes.
what do you tell your Taiwanese friends, about the election going on here in Wisconsin? Because I'm sure people are asking all about what's happening, not only in Wisconsin, but throughout the country.
Well, actually in Taiwan, the democratic system is very similar to what's going on in America. But actually, what I want to do is to observe what the political campaign were going on in Wisconsin and in the United States.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Dan Folkman. I'm with Community Rising, and I'm live streaming this video on YouTube right now. And we'd love to be able to chat a little bit, have you say a few words about where you're from and what do you hope to learn about Kathleen tonight.
We're from Fox Point, Wisconsin, and we are kind of familiar with Kathleen Vinehout because she sends out a newsletter that someone forwarded to me 2 years ago about legislative issues. And I was so impressed with her intelligence and her knowledge and her even-handedness. She is not out to insult people, but to get things done. So I have been following her, so when I found out she was running for governor, I wanted to support her. And Jerry has come along to meet her and learn a little bit more as well, and we did.
All right, very good. Jerry, do you want to say a few words?
I think not. Barbara's a spokesperson in our family.
I think I understand that. All right, thank you very much. All right, so I'm going to walk around here, and there is a gathering forming here. And you can see.
Yeah, for whatever reason, it presses you. Hopefully, after the
See if I can go and talk to a few other people.
Whoops, I'm sorry.
Hey, how about give us a little, let's go over here because I get a better backlight. All right, say a few words.
Oh, get out of the way.
Both of you.
Oh,
Who
okay.
doesn't? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know, whatever you want. I misunderstood, I thought.
Go ahead.
All right.
This is live on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm Dan Folkman. I'm with Community Rising, and I'm a resident here in Riverwest.
So am I.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're just really excited to hear about not only what Kathleen has to say, but what do our residents think about this. So say a few words from your point of view, why you're here, what do you expect to learn, and start with your name if you have.
All right. My name's Rachel Steidel. I live here in Riverwest, and I'm excited to find out more about what Kathleen Vinehout has in store to help Wisconsin get back on track.
Randy?
Oh, I'm here as a supporter of Kathleen. I've been a supporter of Kathleen since she ran for governor back in 2012. I heard her speak after finding out who she was, because of course the media hadn't let anybody really know about her candidacy. And I went to hear her speak under protest because I didn't know who she was. And within about the first 5 minutes of hearing her speak, I started saying, sounds pretty good. And at the end of her speech at a meet and greet, I was really leaning heavily. Then after she answered questions, I was sold, because as a former newsman, I was asking her reporter type questions, yes and no type questions, and I was getting yes and no answers. It was a yes and then why it was a yes, or no and why it was a no. And that sold me right there, because she didn't dance at all, if you know what I mean. Politicians kind of do a little political speak dance when they talk, and she wasn't having any of that. She was letting you know where she was coming from.
So you've been a supporter for the last...
I guess that's, 6 years now?
6 years?
Yeah.
Give me one or two reasons why people in the neighborhood should vote for Kathleen.
Well, for one thing, she's very much about health care. That was one of the reasons that she ran for office to begin with. So she's looking to see to it that the people of Wisconsin have good health care without having to go broke to get it. She's also very much on education. She's looking for to help give local control back to us that Walker and Abley stole. I mean, I could go on and on if you want. How much time do we have?
No, we got good time here, and I think we're going to hear it again from the lady herself.
I'm sure you will, yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Right. Right. This is Charles Bedzinger. He's from Shorewood. Charles, tell us a few words about why you're here tonight, what do you expect to learn, and truth be told, you're part of the video team.
Well, I'm here tonight because I'm interested in the candidates and what they have to say about all kinds of things. There are a lot of important issues we have to deal with, healthcare, environment, redistricting, and so on. So Kathleen has some really good ideas about the economy and the budget. So I'm looking forward to hearing her give us some information on that.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Dan Folkman with Community Rising.
Okay.
And I'm live streaming right now on YouTube.
Okay.
So give us if you don't mind, say a few words. Give us your name and a few words about why you're here and what you hope to learn.
Well, I'm Nathan Vinehout. I am her son. I've been working for her for the past couple weeks. I guess I'm here to meet people and find people who would help with the campaign.
Okay, Nathan, very good. Now,
Yeah.
You work with the campaign. It's your mother who's running.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is true.
Give us one or two reasons why we should vote for your mother.
Oh boy, what are the best ones? One thing I can say from my time, both living with her and like knowing her my 22 years, is how hard she works. She often comes home and talks about politics, talks about the wonderful things that she can do and help change the state. And that's one reason why I really like her and really support her is how hard she works, and also how enthusiastic and fiery she is, which hopefully you guys will get to see tonight.
I think we're going to. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, that's what I said. I'll try to keep an eye out myself and let them know that you're here.
Okay, folks. As I said, this is Dan Folkman, Community Rising, and Wisconsin Video Hub. We're broadcasting right here from Public House, local co-op bar here in Riverwest, Milwaukee. And in the background there, all the commotion is about the candidate Kathleen Vinehout. She's here this evening for a little bit of greet and meet. She's going to say a few words on the stage in the back of the room. And I'm looking forward to hearing her presentation. And I'm just milling around right now, meeting and greeting some of my neighbors, because frankly, this is Riverwest and I live in Riverwest, so I'm just a few blocks from home and enjoying the program. Hi, how are you?
Are you doing this for Kathleen, or is it for something else?
Yeah, I'm Dan Folkman. Oh, you don't want to be on the...
I just want to know who you are first.
Oh, sure. Oh, do you want to know who I am? Dan Folkman. I'm a grassroots videographer. I live right here in Riverwest. And I'm live streaming right now on YouTube.
Oh.
And so it's going to be up and available to the public. And if you'd like to say a few words about why you're here, what you hope to learn, that would be totally good.
Well, I'm on the events committee, and I do membership for the Riverwest Public House. So I try to come to as many of our events as I can, including all of the happy hour events, because I think it's a great program. And if anyone is interested in doing one, it's an opportunity to have a happy hour dedicated to whatever interests you hold or issue you're passionate about.
Say a couple words about Public House.
Sure. So yeah, the Riverwest Public House House is a cooperatively owned bar. It was the second in the nation. There's a couple more now, but we were the second. And what that means is that we don't have one owner or even a board of owners. We are owned by everyone and anyone who comes in and wants to be an owner. And you buy a membership for 5 years and then you become a lifetime member, and all of our governing is done by members. All of our internal structure, so like for instance I do our membership and I am a member.
Right. And just how long has Public House been around?
So last St. Patrick's Day, I know I should know this by heart. I want to say that it was our 7th anniversary last St. Patrick's Day. Forgive me, Internet, if I'm wrong.
If you're wrong, and not by much, and 7 years is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a testament to the community that we've created here in this space, and that's one of our main missions, is to continue to be a space where people can use it for their own particular endeavors. I mean, Spike has been a member since the early days, and he was the one who organized this event this evening. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank God. You can ask because you do it.
All right, again, my name is Dan Folkman. I'm live streaming from Riverwest Public House, local neighborhood bar, which is a cooperative. We just had a few words from one of the management team describing what the Public House is and its significance as a co-op. Been in business for at least 7 years, and that's impressive. Again, this is Dan Folkman live streaming from Riverwest Public House. And yes, right in the camera is Kathleen Vinehout. And she's here, a neighborhood meet and greet. And she's talking about her candidacy for governor of Wisconsin. Hi, how's it going? Oh, you come on, you have to. Just say a few words.
All right. Oh, God.
I got to get you in the camera.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was just going to do a joke. All right.
Tell us, give us your name and why are you here and what do you hope to explain?
My name is Lenora Lee, and I am an East Side resident who is very, very concerned about the way our state is being run. I have a few people in mind whom I think are really good. I've heard Vinehout on public radio, but I've never met her in person, so I have no idea. I'm impressed with Kelda. I'm impressed with McCabe. And, you know, these are people that I think are people that have passion and are going to fight for what we really need in this state. I'm very upset about what's going on with Foxconn. I want to see if there's anything that can be done. Certainly educational issues. The environment is pathetic, and so many of our rights are being taken away. We need strong, bright people, and of course we need the money to fund them to get elected, and the voters to turn out.
Very good. Thank you, Lenore.
Yep. If people want to see this at a later time, how do they go about doing it?
Yeah, are you going to put like a link to her site to it too?
Yeah, we can. Charles?
I'd like that. That would be way cool.
These folks are wanting to know how they can get a hold of this video. You got a card?
I have
and it's on YouTube.
Are you going to do it where you link it to her site, her Facebook page, and put a link to it?
What was the question again?
Can you do a link to it?
All right, folks. So this is live stream. This is YouTube. And I encourage everyone to, if you're watching this and if you're liking it, send us a like and share it with your friends and network members. This is an excellent opportunity for all of us to sort of meet and, for those here, meet and greet. But we as viewers can really learn quite a bit about Kathleen Vinehout, her candidacy for governor of Wisconsin. And I'm looking forward to, she's going to be saying a few words as she makes her way up there to the stage. But I've been interviewing folks here at Public House just to hear what they're thinking about and what they hope to learn. So let me see if I can get another person here. Hello?
Hey, what's happening?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Right. I'm here. This is actually live streaming right now.
Oh, good. You got that going.
I got it going. So why don't you say a few words as to why you're here, who you are, why you're here, and what you expect to learn.
Well, I'm here to listen to her speak and see what we have going for governor here. We definitely need someone. We need to replace Walker, and I'm excited to see what she has to say.
All right. Say a few words if you can. I know you can. About what the significance of this year's election is from your point of view.
Well, just right off the top, I would say the environment. The fact that we've lost our scientists for the DNR, and at the same time we're bringing in a Chinese company at the tune of $3.5 billion of our own taxpayer money, with that contradiction of the people who voted for Walker voted for him because they wanted less government. I'm kind of dumbfounded. All the roads down there are repaired, they're brand new and everything, and you can't even barely ride your bike around here without hitting a pothole and busting the front fork on your bike, let alone a car. So those are just little starting issues. There's so many. Right. In my mind, for me personally, I wanted to recall him, and I'm sorry we didn't.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the program is going to be started.
All right, we're going to let Dan Folkman get in place. There it is.
See, they're getting us ready so we can...
Where the video that Dan is shooting can be found. It's going through Wisconsin Video Hub, or WIS, wisvideohub.net. Now, once Dan gets everything together, edited and everything, it will be there. And in time, it will also be up on YouTube. And at some point, we'll have a link to it from Kathleen's website.
It's actually live on YouTube right now.
Actually, we're live on YouTube right now. So if you want to call your friends, How do their friends go about catching this, Dan? Where do they go to?
They can go to Wisconsin Video Hub, as you said.
Wisconsin Video Hub.
And if somebody's really ambitious, just type my name, Daniel Folkman.
Just type in Daniel Folkman.
YouTube.
Folkman, YouTube.
And my face comes up and click on it.
Click on it. Okay, click on his face. So call your friends and tell them to get on this. My name is Spike Bandy. I'm one of the volunteers for the Kathleen Vinehout campaign. Long-time Riverwester, and so we're very happy and honored to have her here at the Riverwest Public House. This is something that, one of the things that the Public House was created for, to be able to have public discourse and things like political candidate, and an opportunity for people from the community to find out things. I mean, you want to find out about where she is on healthcare, right?
Yeah. Yes.
On education?
Yes.
Okay. Marijuana?
Yes.
Gotta ask that for Riverwest. At any rate, I've been
for the farmers.
and for the farmers who are employed. I've been a fan of Kathleen Vinehout ever since the 2012 election, when I first heard her speak, and I said, this person's the real deal, because when you ask her a question, she didn't do the usual politician dance where you ask them a question and they start talking about something else, and maybe they give you an answer and usually they don't. I heard her answer questions that were uncomfortable, but she answered them, she dealt with them, and she didn't try to dance around it. Her feet never moved. I spent 35 years as a reporter. I tried asking her some reporters questions. They were yes or no questions, and she answered yes, and then she explained why. Or she answered no, and she explained why. Never any dancing. So that said to me right then and there. And then I found out she was one of the Wisconsin 14. You remember Wisconsin 14? All right. So anyway, she's running for governor right now. She wants to replace the weasel, as we all want somebody to do. And in my estimation, she's the person that can do it. Why? Because no one else that's running has at their fingertips all the knowledge necessary to immediately, say you're in a debate, immediately say to Scott Walker, that's a lie. Or Scott, no, you're wrong on that, Scott. No, you're not telling the truth there, Scott. This is the person that can do it. Here's one of the reasons why. Over the last 8 years, every time Scott Walker's come out with a budget, she's come out with an alternative budget. She did it herself. Walker did it, he had his staff sit down and do it, and then he signed it. She did it herself. She sat down and did it herself each time. So she has at her fingertips all the information that's necessary to throw this guy out of office. So without any further ado, State Senator and our next Governor of Wisconsin, State Senator Kathleen Vinehout.
Thank you, Spike. Thank you to everyone that helped put this event together. I'm very grateful for our team, Voters for Vinehout team right here in Riverwest, and grateful for all your support. I am Senator Kathleen Vinehout. I represent a district in western Wisconsin. I live in beautiful Buffalo County, which is about 5 hours straight to the west of here. On the beautiful west coast of Wisconsin, you have the beautiful lake on the east coast of Wisconsin, and we have the muddy Mississippi River on the west coast of Wisconsin. My husband and I have an organic farm. We live in the beautiful hills, and the hills are kind of alive with the sound of music, I like to say. And when you climb up to the top of the hills, you can see the Buffalo River, which runs through our farm, and then you can see where it runs into the Mississippi, and you can see the purple hills of Minnesota on the other side. So sometimes I talk to representing the legislature as where the capital. The news over to western Wisconsin is a challenge. So one of the things I've done over the years, every single Monday morning, is I write a column on the news and about what's happening in the Capitol, kind of the background, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story about what's really going on in the Capitol. You're welcome to sign up for it. If you put a little star next to your name on the sign-in sheet, I will send it to you every week. It's also posted on our website, and so you can go back in time and look about every major issue that the legislature has dealt with over the past 12 years. I've written about and have an opinion about and have some background information about, and all that information is at our website called KathleenVinehout.org. But I know you're here today to hear a little bit about my vision for the state, what we can do differently in Wisconsin, and what's behind our run for governor. And I'm running for governor to put people first, to put people as the center of state priorities, at the center of state, the top of the list of state spending. And what does this mean, and how is it different from where we are today? Because far too long, people have been at the bottom of the list, and a few very wealthy, very connected friends of the governor have been at the top of the list. And that needs to change. And it was sitting through the committee hearings on what I call the kicking people when they're down bills. It was a package of 10 bills that the governor and a few of the suburban out there, like Senator Kathleen, suburban senators and representatives put these bills together. And it was sitting through this hearing where I learned about how, for example, a disabled person who had a wheelchair accessible van that was worth more than $10,000 was going to have to sell that van in order to be able to get food, supplemental food through a program we call Food Share, or healthcare through a program we call Badger Care. Listening to that conversation and get the politics right. We have to change the governor, we have to change the legislature, because we have to change our priorities in Madison. We have to put people first at the top of the list. And this is the vision that I have for tomorrow. It's a very, very different vision than we have for today. I see a state where we build from the bottom up. Because local people, the people who are experiencing the problem, who are closest to the problem, they're actually also closest to the solution. And far too long, we've seen a whole series of bills that take away local people's power to make decisions about their own communities. We had to think about how we create vibrant communities. When we talk about what folks in the state want, everywhere I go, it's the same issues. We want great schools for our kids. We want safe streets. We want parks and art museums and places to play. We want beautiful communities that we can be proud of. We want a great place to raise a family, to start a business. That's what we want. And that's what we all have in common. And when I think about what it takes those things that state government's responsible for. Local, what we call shared revenue, local funds for schools, funds for healthcare, funds for the University of Wisconsin. When I think about the kinds of things that over the years I have written in the alternative budget, they all go back to that idea of community, about having a great place to work, a great place to play, a great place to live, a great place to raise a family. And it's about putting money in people's pockets. What does people first mean? It means a $15 minimum wage. It means people's salaries growing as fast as CEO salaries. Actions that have been taken away, from prevailing wage to collective bargaining, project labor agreements, to the right to work for less. All those changes that have hit workers on the chin, that have made it harder for people to be able to help feed their families. It means changing this around. It means health care. And health care and mental health care, I see, and addiction recovery, I see closely intertwined. I'm passionate about health care for all. You may know a little bit of my background. I was a full-time dairy farmer, and we had to make the decision, difficult decision, on our farm to sell the cows or to drop our very expensive, really crappy health insurance. And we made the decision to drop the health insurance. And during that time, I took a call no mom ever wants to take, that my son needed emergency surgery. And 3 scars later and a $15,000 bill, we took out a second mortgage to pay for the bill. And many of my neighbors were in the same situation, but they didn't have the equity in their farm. I just talked to a guy yesterday who had emergency surgery because his lung collapsed, and he had an $8,000 bill, and he's a small business owner and doesn't have insurance. Solving the problem of health insurance is complicated, but it's very possible. It's very doable. The first 6 months I was in the legislature, I worked with 2 other senators, Democratic senators, to create Healthy Wisconsin, which was a program that covered everybody in the state and saved $1 billion. We passed it in the Senate. This was 2007, 3 years before Obamacare. We passed it in the Senate. It ran into a roadblock in the Assembly. We couldn't get it passed in the Assembly because the Republicans controlled the Assembly. And I went back to work and came up with a whole package of additional changes to insurance that eventually the Journal Sentinel said were the biggest changes to health insurance in a decade. We can have health care for all. There are many, many specific things we can do, beginning by creating our own what we call healthcare marketplace, like MNsure in Minnesota. Why is it Minnesota has dropped their premiums on their marketplace by 10%, and on average ours went up 38%? Why? I can tell you why. And I can tell you what Minnesota is doing that we need to do. And not only can I tell you what we need to do, but I can tell you I wrote a bill in 2010. I introduced it in every legislative session since then. And we need a governor and a legislature that will get it passed and signed. It's very doable. Now, when I think about putting people first, I think about the stories of people. And I want to tell you the story of a man named Frank. I work with my local people as senator to help them get grants, and one of the grants is for an alternative court, alternatives to incarceration. And there was a man who was picked up for a second or third OWI, facing a felony charge. He went into a what we call a recovery court, and he met with a drug counselor, and she said to him, "Why do you drink a quart of vodka a day?" And he said, "Because my teeth hurt." And the drug counselor got him into Medicaid, into the Badger Care program. She got him to a dentist. The dentist pulled all of his teeth. She got him to a doctor because he also had a hernia. She helped him get assistance for heating because it was the winter and his furnace had gone out. He spent 2 months on antibiotics trying to clear up the infections in his jaws. And finally, he started to feel better. He stayed totally sober. And he got to do something he loved to do but hadn't done in years, which is go fishing. Now, think about this. You remember what I said about mental health and addiction and physical health being so closely intertwined. This man does not belong in prison. He belongs with universal health care. And this is what motivates me. This is what makes me say, I want to show that the governor is wrong when he said there's not enough money. Now, the alternative budgets that I've written, I started back in 2011 when so many of us were protesting, and me and my 13 colleagues were hiding out in my sister's basement, who lives right over the border in Wisconsin. And I heard over and over again, we have to do these terrible things because there's no money. And I knew this budget is bigger than this budget. What do you mean there's no money? It's not, the math is not true. So I did the math. I showed how not only did I put back all the cuts that the governor made, whether talking about to roads, to veterans programs, to school milk, to school breakfast programs, to the university, I also changed completely the school funding program, the school funding formula, which helps both urban and rural schools. I did all of the math and I showed how we could have an alternative to the governor's budget, how all of those changes that were made in Act 10, taking away collective bargaining, never had to happen. It was all a ruse, the dropping of the bomb to punish teachers. That's all it was. It was dropping the bomb to punish teachers. So budget after budget, we have 2-year budgets, so budget after budget, for 4 different times, I wrote alternatives. Putting people first. Investing money in mass transit. So the governor says, oh, I made an increase in mass transit. But what he doesn't tell you is his increase was 4%, and his cut a few years before was 10%. So thank you, Governor, for not giving us back what we had all the way back in 2009 during the height of the recession. And we wonder why the bus routes are being cut. It all goes back to the state dollars and how we rearrange those priorities. So whether it was money to the locals through something called shared revenue, where the governor has not shared the revenue, whether it was fixing the healthcare system, fixing the the problems that we have in the schools, completely changing the school funding formula, and fixing the Department of Natural Resources. I would hire back those scientists that got fired. I would put them to work studying how we deal with climate change. Because if you don't believe climate change is happening, walk outside that door. Tell me, when has it been 90 degrees for this stretch in May? This is July 4th weather, not Memorial Day weather. We had 200-year floods back-to-back in western Wisconsin. We lived through the problems all across the state. Whether it was Racine County or Pierce County, we were dealing with the same problems. And the state is not in any way prepared to deal with the effects of climate change. We had a creek that was filled with everything from old roots of the trees to a propane tank to an old shed. And we couldn't get it because of the flood, and we couldn't get anyone to clean up the creek because creek repair didn't fall in any of the buckets that the state had in their emergency services. Well, what I would do is put back in place the Office of Energy Independence, which the governor took away in 2011. It's a coordinating agency that helps us look all across state government at how we deal with climate change. Not just the effects of it, but stopping in its tracks what's happening right now. Everything Wisconsin could do to move to a different type of energy system, to an alternative energy system where we have renewable energy, we have those solar panels, we have, in my world, we have problem with manure. We can make energy out of manure. Who would have thought? What a great idea. We have lots of cows. Let's keep them. No, milk is valuable. No, not so much. Well, maybe the other end would be a little valuable. So in the alternative budget, whether it's fixing local government, fixing community mental health centers, mass transit scholarships, fixing the University of Wisconsin, putting the inspectors in there to inspect the CAFOs that haven't been inspected, the same lines that haven't been inspected. All of these details are important. It's important that the next governor know where the money is buried. The governor has had to him, and he has not followed. The governor only has one bill to write. That is the state budget. It's somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 pages. And the governor's going to have to write that budget in the first 45 days or so after he or she is elected. There's no time for on-the-job training. So thank you for being here today, and I humbly ask for your vote. So I'm going to write down your questions because that helps me remember what it is that we talked about and what folks want to know about.
This lady right here.
One of the things that has hurt the schools in Milwaukee is the budget that the governor did, but another thing is the school choice program. Are you willing to phase it out or get rid of it because it's hurting us badly?
Can you repeat the question? Yes, I certainly can. One of the things that has hurt Milwaukee is the governor's approach to funding schools and the school choice program. Are you willing to phase it out because that is hurting Milwaukee public schools badly? And the answer is yes. And I will tell you, in my alternative budgets, I took the money for the statewide school subsidy program. I took the money for the special needs, private subsidies, public subsidies to private schools. I took that money, so I would eliminate those right away. And phasing out, I know that school choice has been around a long time in Milwaukee, so phasing it out in Milwaukee would have to take time. But absolutely. Let me tell you a little bit about a commission that I serve on. I'm the only Senate Democrat on the Blue Ribbon Commission on School Funding Reform, and we have been from Milwaukee to Turtle Lake to Tomahawk to Fenimore, all over the state, taking testimony on what's happening. And it is remarkable how similar the stories are around the state. Whether we're talking about Milwaukee or Birchwood. So we were just up in Turtle Lake last Monday, and I heard a story about the little community of Birchwood. Half of the students are economically disadvantaged, and for comparison, Milwaukee is about 80%. A third of the students have such poverty in their home that there's not enough food to help the students and their families make it through the weekend. So every single Friday, the older children help the little children carry an 18-pound backpack of food to help the family through the weekend. And it's put together by volunteers in the community and with the help of the food pantry. But if you think about the problems that we face, so many of these problems are all around the state. Certainly Milwaukee is the canary in the mine, because the problems here have lasted a really long time, and for way too long, Milwaukee Public Schools have been underfunded for the needs of the student. We need a funding formula that addresses the needs of the student. We all know students that are economically disadvantaged, that are in poverty, cost more to educate. Their parents simply don't have the resources. So we need additional resources for those students. For the students that are special needs, for the students that are English language learners, for the students that are suffering from trauma, for the students with mental health problems. All of these things I mentioned are dramatically increasing in our state. And we heard over and over and over again all around the state how the governor has not addressed this, and the schools have not recovered from the bomb that got dropped that was called Act 10.
Jenny, and then this lady here. Who else has their hand up?
I do.
Just so I can. Okay, then you, and then you, and then you.
I'm wondering. Right behind you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
I'm wondering if you could speak to why is Wisconsin, our governor has this race to have taxpayers make China great again. We're investing the most money ever. And it's a foreign company, Chinese company. This guy came into office based on let's shrink government, and he's now involved in the biggest governmental investment ever in the country, as far as I know, in China, which is supposed to be this conflict of interest that we have as far as our taxes. And we're paying for it, and now they're talking about, well, this is really going to be an assembly plant, not going to be, I know this is a little in-depth question, but not going to be the big ticket item that they said, because they've already started another company in China to do that. And yet they still got all that water that has no EIS attached to it, right. and we have no scientists anyhow. And so Chinese seem to have a really good plan. They seem to have effectively been very effective at getting it into place, and yet it seems like a lot of people think it's all about jobs, and they're going to be jobs assembling Apple computers or Apple cell phones.
Did you hear the question in the back? Okay, I'm going to give it a little bit of brevity. So the question is, why is Wisconsin racing to make China great again?
That's it.
Yeah.
And simply put, that question is, how would you respond to the governor's plan to give $4.5 billion to Foxconn, $3 billion of them in direct cash in their pocket? Foxconn is an absolute disaster on so many levels when it comes to protecting state tax dollars. There is no pot of $4 billion, $4.5 billion, $3 billion waiting to be given away. Already the budget is very tight. This money is going to have to come out of what we call the general funds budget, the main budget where your income tax and sales tax and tax when you buy liquor, where that goes. That budget, 85% of it goes to 5 things: schools, the university, healthcare, local government, and tech colleges, along with the university, and corrections. Which one of them are we going to cut? Frankly, all of them have been underfunded for a very long time. So what we're looking at is a very difficult budget going forward. At the same time, the next governor, and I think just about all the candidates are saying, whoa, this is a bad deal for Wisconsin. But getting out of this contract may be difficult. Do you remember Talgo? Remember Talgo train? Okay, $65 million contract that Governor Walker threw out the window when he came. Okay, what has happened? The state has had to pay at least $50 million to that company, and the issue is still in court. So pay attention to the media this summer, because my friends on the inside are telling me that there's about to be a settlement and a whole lot more taxpayer dollars going out the door to settle the mistake that the governor made when he came in office way back in 2011. So that gives me a little pause about walking very carefully through the minefield that the next governor is going to inherit. That contract, 36 pages or so, is an absolute mess. I can't imagine any CEO who was representing the state sign the contract. It's full of what I would call weasel words. A good example of the weasel words. The company shall, to the best of its ability. We might as well say the company might or might not. And when it comes to getting back the dollars that are given that company for things that the company doesn't deliver, that they promise, it says the state may get back $3 billion when they don't deliver what they promised. Well, let me tell you that the next problem, and we haven't even got to the environmental problems, who is overseeing this contract? The Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. Oh yeah, for sure. 4 different independent, nonpartisan audits by the Legislative Audit Bureau, 4 showed that the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, it's not a corporation, it's an arm of state government, was never independently verifying the creation of the jobs. Never. And when the CEO came to talk to us, the secretary, we asked him on the audit committee, why aren't you doing this? And he said, well, we don't do it. Well, it's the law, buddy. Isn't your job to follow the law? And these are the people we're putting in charge? Oh my heavens. So the question oftentimes I'm asked is what to do about it. I do believe there's going to be a lawsuit, maybe several. Because clearly they are removing, in the bill that passed, that of course I voted against, in the bill that passed, they are removing water from the Great Lakes and they are diverting it, which is a violation of the Great Lakes Compact. Remember, the Great Lakes Compact is not just something Governor Doyle signed. It's something the legislature voted on. It was a 250-page bill, and it got put into state statute, so it's state law. So that makes me think that there will be environmental lawsuits, and this may give us the opportunity to put some really strict strings on those dollars to make sure that that company delivers what they promised. But could I get rid of the whole deal if I could without mortgaging our children's future? Absolutely, I would.
One lawsuit was filed today.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
I think that's the path forward. I think that's how we bring the company back to the table.
Okay, who was next?
Who filed the lawsuit? Do you remember?
There were, I think, about 3 or 4
Oh, that's good. That's
organizations that filed it.
All right.
I just saw a quick.
That's good. We'll find out. We'll worry about it. Thank you. Thank you for asking the question.
My question is, what is your program or plan for expanding the economies of both urban and rural areas that are struggling? You talk about all this that we need to do, but what's your plan for expanding the economies to create family supporting and environmentally friendly jobs?
This is kind of a follow-up question to Foxconn.
That it is.
So the question is, what's your plan to create family supporting jobs in the urban areas and in the rural areas where communities are struggling? And I told you a little bit in the speech about how I feel about workers and the minimum wage and fixing the problems with all of the hit workers on the chin legislation. So we've got that part out there. Now I want to tell you a little bit about my neighborhood. I represent the city of Eau Claire and have for almost 12 years. During the last almost 4 years, Eau Claire has added 3,000 jobs, which is exactly the number that the company, not the governor, but the company said originally they were going to create 3,000 jobs. And this is without a $3 billion cash subsidy or transfer of taxpayer dollars. How they did it was to work together collaboratively with the Chamber of Commerce, the university, the tech colleges, the business community, and local government to create the kind of community that people want to live in. So we now have art on Barstow Street. We now have parks. We now have a new confluence center because the Eau Claire is where the Chippewa and the Eau Claire River meet, so it's kind of called the confluence. It's like a slip of land where two rivers come together. There's a big building. Part of it was paid for with public dollars, but not much. When I think about the success of Eau Claire, I think about what I said at the beginning. What happens when we create the kind of community where schools are great, there's a great university system, there's a wonderful arts community, there's awesome parks to go to, there are safe streets. What happens when government does its job right? So here's the problem we face. A few very well-connected companies have gotten a lot of money, and a whole lot of companies and a whole lot of communities have gotten nothing or very little. What we need to do is do well what government does. Fund the schools, fund law enforcement, fund the local government so we can fund transportation so we can fix the potholes. Fund nonprofits who are doing the work of helping people in the community. Fund the university system, fund the tech colleges. If you can forgive me for just a minute for a farmer analogy, think about, or gardening, we'll make it gardening. Think about fertilizing the soil. The job of state government is to help fertilize the soil so that all the plants grow, not just the one in Racine. Yeah. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Well, go ahead. You mentioned healthcare, and I understand that you said you couldn't afford the healthcare. What I'd like to know is what makes you think that I can afford to pay for your healthcare?
We need a system where everybody is in the same boat. And when everybody is in the same boat, that boat stays in repair. This is exactly what Healthy Wisconsin did. So think about what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that we create our own marketplace, like Minsure in Minnesota. That gives us the ability to offer on a public option, like Badger Care, in the marketplace. Something we can't do if we only go with the federal program, healthcare.gov. So at that point, we are able to bring more people into the boat and show how basic adage, the bigger the pool, the lower the risk, which is the vision that I have. It's exactly what we did with Healthy Wisconsin. That means nobody is left behind. Everybody has an option. Under the Affordable Care Act, right now, if we could get the votes, Wisconsin could cover another 79,000 people and free up $286 million in state dollars because the federal government would pay for the folks we're now paying for with state money. It's a no-brainer. It's called Medicaid expansion. It's a no-brainer. Should have been done a long time ago. We would have freed up almost $1 billion. It was done a long time ago, right after the Affordable Care Act passed. Plus, we would have people, a whole lot more people that are covered. And think about what we could do once we free up that money. I'm a big fan of increasing access to mental health services and addiction recovery. Right now, we have a crisis in Wisconsin, and it's not just an opioid crisis. In the West, in the North, in the cities, we're facing another problem with meth. And of course, there's always been problems with people struggling with addiction and allergies to alcohol. We need a community-based mental health and addiction recovery system. And I would take that $286 million and I would begin a down payment on creating that kind of system. Why is it that Minnesota has twice the number of people incarcerated? And when an audit was done years ago on the prison population, 70 to 80% of the prisoners in Wisconsin prisons had addiction issues. More than 30% had severe diagnosed mental illness, and 10% were developmentally disabled. This is inhumane. We should not be locking up these people. We should be helping them get treatment. And we don't have the facilities to do the treatment. We need to make that investment. Absolutely no one in our society should be without health insurance. It is our moral obligation to each other. It's more than a right. It's our moral obligation.
Follow to that healthcare? Should I ask a follow-up? Sure. Okay. So, yeah, you said it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. Right. But, so if it was such a no-brainer, however, we wouldn't be in this pickle. Because there are certain people, certain industries that profit. And so my question to you is, how do you see addressing the insurance companies and the lobbyists for those insurance companies that keep this system in place?
I'm for that question, and I don't know if it made its way over to this side state, but I'm sure if you remember in 2007 and then again in 2010 during the campaign, what happened as a result of us introducing Healthy Wisconsin. So in my race in 2010, we were flooded with these very racist direct mail pieces with dark-skinned people climbing a wall, and Kathleen Vinehout would give illegal immigrants health care and take away your taxpayer, using your taxpayer dollars. When I tell you this story, I'm reminded of the battle that we will go through to create health care for all. And I lived through part of that battle with Healthy Wisconsin in 2007, and then when I ran for re-election in 2010. But even more so, if you have the opportunity, look at a movie by Canadian Public Television called The Story of Tommy Douglas. Tommy Douglas is the father of the Canadian Medicare system. He was a preacher who saw his parishioners die because they did not have health insurance, and he felt a moral obligation to do something, and he ran for office. Eventually, he became their version of governor in Saskatchewan. And he pushed and pushed and pushed, and if I remember the numbers right, he worked for 28 years to get the votes to be able to do exactly what you just said, to deal with the insurance companies and the lobbyists. They even shipped in boats. I'm not saying boats, but buses, or however they came, probably limousines, of people from the people from the American Medical Association to Canada to stop this, because they figured if Canada got it right, America would be close behind. That's a true story. It's all history. People came and dumped blood in front of him in his residence. It's an intense story, but it shows you what you're up against. And I have no illusion after living through what happened with Healthy Wisconsin that this is going to be easy or it's going to be done anytime soon. But I'm committed to making it happen. It can happen. We know how to to get the policy right. We've seen what's happened in other countries. There's absolutely no reason we're paying double and have such terrible outcomes in the American system compared to other developed countries. This is a solvable problem, but it's going to take everybody to solve it. It's going to take a lot of work, and people are going to lose. And he tells the story, Tommy Douglas tells the story of people who lost elections because of it. Even the passage of the Affordable Care Act, people lost elections. It's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of support, but as I said, it's our moral obligation to do it.
Yes, actually, I have kind of a two-part question. I came to you earlier and I showed you an email from a friend of mine who's a millennial. And one of her issues was the abortion thing. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but someone over there said something. So I thought I would bring that up. But my other question was going to be about the environment. And I'm very concerned because of the law that they have passed that allows companies to pollute the land, and we have no recourse as citizens now to sue them. Can you do something as governor to change that, and what could be done?
And you're thinking of Foxconn in particular because they did?
I am, but there are other companies that are allowed to do that, and we've got a bunch of them moving in.
Okay, first I'll talk about abortion. I'm pro-choice. I have been pro-choice. I have a long list of bills. I'm very sad to tell you this because they're very bad bills that have been passed by the legislature and are now law. A good example is limiting access to abortion in 20 weeks. But they're all posted on my website with links to the roll call votes. I have some opponents that are trying to make hay about this. It's sad that Democrats will attack other Democrats, but it sometimes happens. But it's all on the website. You have lots of information there. It's at KathleenVinehout.org under Women's Health. On the issue of the environment, one of the problems that we're facing right now is that we don't have the staff to be able to do the inspections to be able to enforce the current law. Yes, there are many laws that have been passed that need to be repealed that hurt our environment, and even in the last days of the legislative session this spring, there were additional laws that took away air monitoring, for example, of the air monitoring station in Sheboygan is a good example of one of the laws that was passed. So there's a lot that we would need the legislature to repeal, so we would need the votes, but there is also a great deal of laws that are on the books that are not enforced. And this came out very clearly in an audit that was done, again, by the Legislative Audit Bureau, nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau, that was on the polluters of water. And in this audit, and it's a very big audit, there are many details of what happens when an agency is cut back, when an agency is muzzled. So I represent more sand mines than any other senator in the state. And I am passionate about protecting people's health and safety. And I wrote bills to do this. And of course, my bills were all signed to Senator Tiffany's mining committee, and he didn't have a hearing on any of them. But one of the bills, I needed help, technical help. And I went up to a local DNR person who had knowledge of this, what was happening, and I said, can you help me? And we were at a public meeting. It was a Towns Association meeting. We were upstairs in the courthouse in Jackson County. And he said, come with me. And we walked down a hall. This is upstairs in the courthouse. We walked down a hall, down another hall, and down another hall, and he opened a door, and it was the janitor's closet. And he took me into the janitor's closet, and he said, Kathleen, I can't talk to you. And I said, why? And he said, because everything I say and everything you say, I have to write down and give to my boss. And I don't want to do that, because then I become a target for retaliation. And thinking, how can this possibly be? I am this man's senator. I'm going to him, he has the expertise and knowledge, and I needed to write the bill. And he won't tell me because he feels like there's going to be retaliation. So fast forward about 4 years, and Kathy Stepp is still the secretary. And this water audit comes out. And she sits in front of us and defends, or doesn't, the fact that she doesn't have the staff to do the inspections of the sand mines. She doesn't have the staff to do the inspections of the CAPOs, the large combined animal feeding operations. And in fact, the audit showed that all of the reports that were given to the department from the CAPOs when they had a manure spill, most of the reports were not read because they didn't have the staff. So if they didn't read them, how could they possibly understand what had happened when that manure spilled into the water, which incidentally belongs to all of us? So I asked Kathy Stepp these questions. And then I asked her, why is it, Ms. Secretary, that you have muzzled your staff and you refuse to fill these inspector positions, you refuse to monitor the groundwater, you refuse to hire the inspectors to do the inspections that are already law? And she gave me some mealy-mouthed answer, and I said, but you muzzled your own people. And you know what she did? I'm sitting over there, and she turned her back to me in the middle of the hearing like that. Oh yeah, but that told me everything I needed to know. And it shows you so clearly what happens when you have a leader at the top that either doesn't want the law enforced or does want the law enforced. So yes, there are many laws that need to be changed. Yes, we need a legislature to do that. But we also need a governor at the top that says to the agencies, I want you to enforce the law.
I have a question. Just a moment, please. And then
Hi, Kathleen. My name's Rachel. I'm a normal supporter, so I'm here to ask you or tell you, I think I read that you're in support of Bill AB 482. Unfortunately, you're a senator, not an assembly representative. So as governor, would you legalize it?
Yes.
Awesome. That sounds great.
I want to add a little bit to it. Repeat the question. The question was, would you legalize marijuana? And I said yes. So I have to tell you a little bit of a story about our district. So I have been a long-time hemp supporter. I actually authored the bill back in 2013. I wrote it in 2015. In 2017, the Republicans stole my bill. They made it better, and lo and behold, they passed it. So right now, I'm in conversations with my hemp farmers, which I am so glad that they can do this. I'm so glad they can extract the CBD oil. I'm so glad they can sell it, because right now the farm economy is just crap, and the farmers need a good cash product to sell. Yes, so we help the farmers and we help the people that need the oil, because the oil is amazing what it can do to help people. I have heard from my farmers that they're very afraid that the way the recreational marijuana bill is written right now, that it would allow for too many large corporations to come in and completely control the production of marijuana. So making sure that the bill is written so that the farmers in Wisconsin can help grow the marijuana is very important to me. Obviously, we can buy marijuana if it's legal from anywhere it comes from. It can come from Mexico, it can come from Guatemala, but also let it also come from Wisconsin, because we have Wisconsin farmers that want to. That's a great question. I really admire Matt Flynn, and I'm not going to steal his lines, but I think what he's saying, and Matt Flynn is one of my opponents, and what he's saying is that he would pardon people who have crimes committed related to marijuana. I think that's an awesome idea. I would do the same thing. And I want to tell you one small story, because I want to tell you how powerful you are. Every one of you, how powerful you are. So I was afraid of the issue of medical marijuana. This was before I came around to marijuana, and this was maybe back in 2009 or many years ago. There were protests at the Capitol, as there often are. And I went across the street to go to run an errand and came back, and there was a man standing alone. And he had a really big sign, and it had really small letters, and it was a lot of writing. And I said, tell me about your sign. You know, I'm gregarious, fun-loving, you know, very friendly person. And I said, tell me about your sign. And I shook his hand. His name was Aaron. And he said, I'm an Iraq vet. I served 3 tours of duty, combat duty in Iraq. And I want you to legalize medical marijuana because it is the one thing that helps me deal with PTSD. I have a small child at home. I have a new baby and a wife, you know, just had a new baby. And every time the baby cries, I am back in Iraq hearing the cries of the babies. And I cannot live with my wife because the PTSD is so bad. And I've tried all the programs at the VA hospital. I've been all kinds of psychotropic drugs. Nothing helps as much as medical marijuana to help me deal with this. Will you please, Senator, legalize it? And I'm like, his name is Aaron. I'm like, oh my God, Aaron, you have totally changed my mind. And I want to tell you this story because I want you to know how powerful your voice is and how one single story can change a senator's view. You have that power in your hand. You do. All of you. Every single one of you. So use your voice. Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, folks.
When and why did you take money from the National Rifle Association? And what is your plan to regulate guns and keep our students safe?
I took $500 from the NRA 3 or 4 days before the election in 2014. It was an unsolicited campaign contribution that came like all other campaign contributions came in the mail, and we used it like every other campaign contribution. Which I think somebody did the math and figured out it's like $41 for every, what did you say?
$41 a year.
$41 a year. There you go.
You don't have to.
All right.
And what's your plan?
Well, you have 2 different questions. One question is about school safety and one question is about firearm regulation. We have been hearing a great deal about school safety around the state, and there are many issues related to it. One is the basic hardening the facility, so having to do with the entrance, bulletproof glass. A lot of this has to do with schools that haven't had the resources. To go back to Birchwood, just to give you a feel for what schools are dealing with. Forever, Birchwood never locked their doors until last month. When the school decided to lock their doors, they didn't have the money to do it. So one of the board members went door to door to door, collecting $3,000 to be able to buy an intercom system. That's how underfunded our schools are. Now they said when they came to testify, what we really need is to rekey the locks, because after 50 years, everybody in Birchwood has a key. So there's a lot of resources that need to go to the schools. The legislature did pass a bill to bring some money to the schools. The Democrats said it wasn't enough. We all voted for an amendment to add more money, to add a steady stream of money, to add resources for school liaison officers. Over and over again, we've heard that the cuts have hit guidance counselors or school counselors. They've hit the psychologists. The budget cuts have hit social workers. So the people in the schools that help the the kids that are in trouble. At the same time, they see a huge increase in the mental health issues. So the people that are there to help have been cut back. Question of firearm regulation. I think the first step to create a safer environment is to have real, true, universal background checks. We can do this. It's actually an amendment that I introduced the same night that we voted on the school safety money. We can do this by working with the Department of Justice. So one of the problems is the courts don't have the time and resources to be able to enter all the records. But the Department of Justice does have access to the records. We have a national instant criminal background check system. It's national, but it's not up to date. And it also doesn't cover private sales. I don't think we can make private sales illegal, but I think we can create a system where we have a background check that is part of that private sale transaction. And the bill that I put together has to do with a pre-authorization authorized by the Department of Justice. The added advantage of that is that there's a record in the state of the transaction. And the seller, from the seller's perspective. If I'm going to sell a gun, the last thing I want to do is have it go to somebody that's going to do something bad with it. So I want to know that that person is legal to be able to buy the gun. We came very close in the waning days of the legislative session to passing something like this, because in our environment we have to do it with Republican votes. I introduced this idea on Tuesday. On Thursday of the same week, the Republican Assembly took the idea of DOJ and actually put it in their own amendment on a universal background check system. So I think we're close to being able to figure this out. And I think that would be a great first step.
That's it? Assault weapons?
Well, think about the usual task that every legislator has in writing any bill. The first thing you have to think of is how are you going to define something? And when you think about how the assault weapon ban in 1992, or was it 94, was written under Clinton, they struggled with the same issue. Because the mechanism of a semi-automatic gun is the same. Machine guns have been outlawed a long time ago. They were outlawed in 1986. So if you have a machine gun, it's illegal. Which is why I think bump stocks or anything else that makes a semi-automatic automatic should be illegal. But to figure out how to ban assault weapons, you've got to figure out how to define an assault weapon. And frankly, the mechanism in an AR-15 is the same as the mechanism in a bird gun. So every single ban of assault weapons I have ever seen also bans common hunting rifles, which I do not support.
Not exactly.
Well, you can show it to me.
You just said healthcare can be figured out. I don't know why you can't figure this out.
Not everybody thinks you should take away the guns.
It's too hard, so we're not going to do anything about it. It's too hard.
She just said she gave you step one.
Yes. With local control relating to regulating firearms. I'm a strong proponent of local control. I voted with the NRA, I voted against the NRA. Most of the time when I voted against the NRA, it has to do with them taking away local control. It's a difficult issue. If you read about it, you'll know more about what happened. You're trying to balance both the state and the federal constitution, so we not only have the Second Amendment, but we also have a constitutional amendment in our Wisconsin Constitution. You're trying to balance both state and federal court decisions, and of course you're trying to figure out the usual things that we have to figure out putting together any legislation. And yeah.
You know what, I want to just go back. Because when you first initially brought up about the assault rifle and a gun to shoot birds or what was it?
Mm-hmm.
You were
It's a semi-automatic mechanism.
So you were saying there's a similar mechanism.
It's the same. It's not similar, it's the same.
And we need to let you finish your thought because I think what you're saying, that's the difficulty in banning it. I'm guessing you were going somewhere with that point and you didn't get to finish.
Yeah, well, right. If you read details, this is all out there, but if you read the details of the assault weapon ban in the 90s, because they couldn't ban the mechanism, they banned what were like the plastic parts on the mechanism, because the guns themselves are basically they're plastic parts. So they banned the pistol grip, they banned the bayonet clip, they banned little pieces. So what the gun manufacturers did is they said, oh, okay, well, you don't like that plastic piece, we'll put another plastic piece. And frankly, you got gun manufacturers that want to make things look big and bad, so they make it look even bigger and badder. And so the effect of it was that there were more of these types of weapons sold than less, so people that evaluated it said, well, that didn't work so good. We probably got to figure out a different way to do it. And remember, they're fully automatic. What you think of as a machine gun, they are illegal and should be illegal. And anything that makes them act like that should be illegal. So I think we can agree on that.
So this sounds a lot more complicated than just banning it because of the history and the details.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not any different than any other legislation. Every single legislator, when they want to do something, the first thing they do is sit down and say, how do I define it? And we've had all kinds of ledge council attorneys that say, okay, you want to do this. So a great example is all my sand mine bills. They're like, well, how are you going to define a sand mine? What's the difference between a sand mine and a gravel pit? That's the first thing you have to do. So having an opinion or having a sound bite is one thing. Actually being able to do something real, you've got to know some details about the history and the way the law is written. That's the business of being a lawmaker.
What about the number of bullets in the clip?
That's definitely doable. I can't say that I think that we need, 70 bullets to shoot guns. If you need that many, you better go practice. It's hard to practice a little more if you're going to go out there and hit the deer. If you can't hit them with 7 or 8.
That seems to be a way to simplify.
Yeah, right, and it's a lot. And you still have some issues because basically you're talking about banning a box. And I live in a world of welders. You guys probably do too. And you can go. I mean, yeah, you have to get the tolerances right, but you can go and manufacture. You can make that kind of box. So, and there's millions and millions and millions of them out there already. So it wouldn't be easy, but it's a little bit easier to define than the complicated legislative history related to the assault weapons ban. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I was
Hey!
I have 2 questions.
I have to get my notebook.
I'm wondering, you're an insider in this Republican-controlled legislature. What is their vision? What do they want Wisconsin to be?
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it's really, they've caused so much harm and so much suffering from my viewpoint. What is it? What do they want? How do they see the state becoming? Okay, that's.
I thought, so the question is, what is the Republican vision? They've caused so much harm and suffering. What's their motivation? I thought you were going to ask me, which I've been asked a lot, okay, you're a lawmaker, you want to become governor, you're probably going to be working with the Republicans. How are you going to get anything done if the Republicans control the legislature?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good question.
Okay, but I want to ask.
That's really good.
Well, and they kind of have the similar answers. So the first thing I would say is that not all Republicans are the same, just like not all Democrats. I work with actually quite well on the audit committee, and I would especially call out Rob Coles, who's the chair when I'm in the minority. So if the Dems are in the majority, I'm the chair of the audit committee on the Senate side, and when the Dems are in the minority, I'm the ranking member, and he's the chair. And we've been doing this for 12 years. Because we've gone back and forth in the Senate. We've even had control when John Lehman won back in 2012 for a brief time. So what I would say is we need to find that common ground. And actually, for him, some of the really bad environmental bills got stopped because of him, because of his work. He said he got enough votes to stop them in the Senate. We need to find that common ground. What I have seen different in the last year, and it's been coming, but it's much worse in the last year, is the empowerment of 4 of the legislators. They're all the senators. They're all from the suburbs, and they are all strongly ideological. So 4 of them, and they, I guess one's from Walworth County, so that's not really suburbs, but you know what I mean. What I have seen over and over again, and I'm on the committees that these guys chair, some of them, and so I see all the bills that come forward that they want to pass, even though they don't always make it to the Senate floor, they don't always get passed. And I have seen situations where one person testified, just one, and that person was not from Wisconsin. And when the author, this would be, say, Senator Craig, I call Senator Kapinga, when the author was asked questions, he said, talk to so-and-so, he's going to testify after me. So it's very clear he didn't know the details of the bill. And that person, that one person, was from a group outside of Wisconsin, and in almost every case, he was representing a group that would benefit financially if this bill passed. And I took the last calendar. So the last calendar we got to go to the full Senate floor was 125 bills, and we got the final calendar the day before we went to the Senate floor. And I got rid of all the bills that I would call the cat and dog bills, the bills where we passed a bill or they passed a bill and they put a guy out of business inadvertently because we used the wrong definition, and that put that business out of business. We didn't want to put that out of business, so we had to change that bill so the guys didn't lose their jobs. I got rid of all those bills. And then I created 4 pots. And I could put all the controversial bills into these 4 pots. The first one was taking away consumer protection. An example of that was the rent-to-own legislation.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that.
Oh, I do too. I hate that too. And that bill would have made it impossible for somebody to know the interest rate if they used rent-to-own, say, to get a washing machine. This is like, get it now, folks. This is a good example of that company. So thank God that bill didn't pass, but a number of other bills passed like that. Then I would say that another pot was taking away environmental protections. We talked about this a little bit. Taking away the protections for the air, the water, the land, the animals. Another pot was taking away worker protections. We talked about that with all the worker bills. Another pot was taking away local control. Many bills took away local control, and some of them were targeted right at Milwaukee. So much so that my good friend Senator Carpenter took the flag of the Tea Party called "Don't Tread on Me" and put it on his Senate desk. It's like, don't tread on Milwaukee. So that gives you a little bit, that's kind of a long answer to what's their vision. And their vision is to make a few guys really rich.
My next question is, you're not known in Milwaukee.
That's why we're here.
And you have to carry us. You have
Yes.
to carry. So what is your strategy? I mean, there's a lot of you on the stage, and you're all vying to become that person. So what's your strategy for how you are going to stand out, or you are going to be different, or what are you going to do to make us vote for you? To distinguish yourself from all the others.
Thank you. So what am I going to do to distinguish myself from all the other candidates? I have a very different background than anybody else in the race. I've heard my colleagues that are wealthy lawyers say, I imagine what it's like to walk in their shoes. Well, I don't have to imagine what it's like. My dad was a union laborer. He dug ditches for a living. He was, the guy that thought that college would be wasted on a girl, so he wouldn't sign my financial aid papers, the old-fashioned guy that he was. And I ended up working my way through college. I struggled. I was a full-time nurse's aide for 5 years, and starting when I was 14. And then, even as a full-time dairy farmer, I spent time without insurance. I know what it's like to get, slapped in the face at 4 a.m. with a messy tail of a cow. So Republican attacking, it still bother me. And I have a background in the legislature that nobody else has. Nobody else has spent time with the audit committee, and think of audit as both program evaluation and finances of the state. Nobody else has written 4 alternatives to the governor's budget. We've got one former legislator and one current legislator, but they haven't served much time in the legislature. So I would say overall, I have a very different background than anybody else, and I'm running a very different campaign. Remember back in 2006 when I ran the first time, I had no name recognition, never run for public office, and I had no money. And I beat a popular Republican incumbent by 2,000 votes. And I did it exactly the way we're doing this tonight. By talking to people who talk to their neighbors, who talk to their neighbors, who talk to their neighbors. In an environment where political people are not at all trusted, what we need is a grassroots organization where neighbors talk to neighbors talk to neighbors, because it's that relationship that you have with that neighbor that creates the trust because of the history you have together that allows you to be trusted by your neighbor when you say, I've listened to this gal and I really like what she talks about. And that personal testimony is more powerful than anything else. So we're running the kind of grassroots campaign where you can take a real leadership role and have a real hand in what happens on that debate stage when whoever wins the primary goes toe-to-toe with the governor in October. And who that person is makes a big difference.
Yep.
Thank you.
One more quick thing, and this is actually a statement more than a question. If I'm correct, you are much more known up in northern Wisconsin.
Sure, yeah.
And my family's from up in northern Wisconsin in Taylor County, farmers and Republicans. What I'm getting at is, and I think this goes back to what she said, that you're not as familiar here in Milwaukee, but
true.
you are up there.
Sure.
And you get along with others.
Sure,
and
sure.
if I'm correct, I also think there are Republicans who have actually looked at you in favorable light.
Absolutely. It's the reason I'm senator today. I won 3 times in a district that Scott Walker won, 3 times in a district that Trump won, in a part of the state where we must win if Democrats are going to win.
And that goes like what happened in February when a woman died in northern Wisconsin, where we are going to need votes.
Right.
What worries me is that I want you to come back here all the time to Milwaukee. So those people that actually hear
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Milwaukee's at the top of my list. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, let's hear it for our next governor, Senator Kathleen Vinehout. And someone asked me, asked her, well, how's she going to pay for all this? Take a look at her website. There are 4 alternative budgets there. That's how she's going to pay for everything. And speaking of paying for everything, I'm not ashamed to ask. People know me, I'm a fundraiser, so I'm not ashamed to ask people for money. This campaign is not going to win itself. We do need contributions from you. Large or small, doesn't matter, we just need your help. And there are envelopes back here that you can make a contribution in, or if you just want to toss something in, that's great. But if it's more than $10, you absolutely must fill out some information that's required by the state and by the feds. So please open up your wallets. We do have some food back there. Some of it compliments of Riverwest Pizza. Don't forget to tip your bartender. Please, let's hear it for T. Krulos back there.
All right, folks, this is Dan Folkman.
But again, we definitely need
This
your
is the
money,
end
so please open up your wallets and
Riverwest
help us out. Thanks for coming out.
Public House candidate meet and greet with Kathleen Vinehout. If you enjoyed the program, which I hope you did, please share this program from YouTube to your friends and network members. Like the program, and really, it would be really great if you would subscribe to my YouTube page. So thank you on behalf of Community Rising and Wisconsin Video Hub. This is the evening. Good night and thank you for watching.
We're always there.